Today, I want to give you 10 things to consider before moving to Los Angeles.
Number 10.
The dating scene sucks. Now, I know you're probably going to say, Dietrich, the dating scene sucks everywhere. But there's something about Los Angeles that's just a little bit different than other places, even places like New York. And sure, I did get married here in Los Angeles, but I was here for quite some time before that happened. Now, I'm not saying that Los Angeles sucks. It's just difficult sometimes to find the perfect match or the right person. And the reasons are trifold. For one, LA is so spread out. So if you live in certain parts of LA, you might not want to commute to a different part just to go out on a date. Yeah, it's a little lazy like that, but there's truth in that matter, right? Another thing is a lot of people use dating as almost a network opportunity. So if one of the first questions that you hear on a date is, what do you do for a living? You probably can kind of guess where this one is going. This is like the entertainment capital of the world. And as such, there are a lot of people who come here that want to become stars, rub elbows with stars, or just want to see stars. And if you're that ticket to get them to the destination, it is what it is. So again, you just want to be very careful about considering your options as far as dating if you're single in moving to Los Angeles.
Number 9.
The pockets. What in the world are you talking about, Dietrich? I'm not talking about the pockets on your jeans or your jacket. I'm talking about the pockets in Los Angeles's communities. So you can go to one area, go 3 blocks north and 1 block east, and the vibe looks totally different. I didn't realize that when I got here until people started telling me about the pockets. And the more I started to travel around the city, I started to see these different pockets. Now, keep in mind, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because if you find a great pocket, that's awesome for you. But you can go into a neighborhood and think the entire neighborhood looks one way, and in fact, it can look totally different.
Number 8.
Now, I talked about the city being so spread out. It's not walkable for a lot of different things. For some things it is, but for a lot of different things, it's not that walkable. And because of that, you have to get a car. And guess what? Gas ain't cheap. So if you're coming from another part of the country, like let's say down south, where you could purchase gas for, I don't know what, 99 cents a gallon, something like that. I don't know if it's been like that for a while, but if you're coming from that section of the world, gas is going to be kind of a sticker shock when you move to Los Angeles. So you just want to brace yourself for that, because yes, you're probably going to have to drive a lot of places. And if you have a gas guzzler, that's going to eat into your budget. Now, again, I don't say this to deter you from moving to Los Angeles, but definitely something to consider before you make that move.
Number 7.
So Los Angeles is great. Lots of sunshine, palm trees, but there's no real winter here. So if you're a transplant like me, I came from the Midwest. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. So I love to take my sled, go up to the school after it snowed, and just whoosh down the hill. Well, you can't really do that here. Now, you can if you drive up to Big Bear, which is several hours away. But it's not the same as just gathering with a group of friends, travailing out and just sledding down a hill at reckless abandon and maybe going out into the street. Well, probably not the going out into the street part, but you get it. So in LA, there is no real winter. Now, for some of you, that's awesome, because you're like, I don't want to deal with any more snow anyway. But if you're somebody who loves to see the snow at Christmas, if you're somebody that loves to see the leaves start to fall and the snow gather and it gets a little bit chilly so that you can change the type of clothing that you wear, you may want to consider that. So if you're coming from someplace else, you might want to ditch that big, heavy goose jacket that you have, because you may not actually need it here. That's neither a good nor a bad thing.
Number 6.
Rent control, something to consider if you're planning on moving here and perhaps becoming an investor. Rent control limits the amount that you can increase your rent on an annual basis. Usually every 12 months you can go up a certain percentage, right? You can't just decide I'm going to buy this property and I'm going to kick all the tenants out and then I'm going to raise the rent and bring in tenants and I'm going to just make a ton of money. We have rent stabilization ordinances that prevent you from doing such a thing. So if you're an investor, you need to be aware of this before you decide to move to California, Los Angeles in particular, and just invest in the Los Angeles real estate market. These are things that you definitely want to consider because it could put you in the red rather than in the black.
Number 5.
Number 5 ties into number 6, where I talked about rent control. And here in Los Angeles, the rent is too high. So this was something that I was totally unprepared for when I first moved to Los Angeles some many years ago. I was coming from St. Paul, Minnesota, where I had a downtown apartment and I was paying about $600 a month. You'd be hard pressed to find something in downtown Los Angeles for $600 a month. In fact, you'd be hard pressed to find something in Los Angeles for $600 a month. So you want to consider that before you make your move out here, because the cost of living is a little bit higher than some of the other places you may be thinking about. Again, if you can afford it, by all means, go for it. But if your budget is already tight, definitely consider this one before you make that move.
Number 4.
If rent is expensive, you can bet housing is just as expensive. This is probably one of the least affordable places to actually buy a home. Now, I don't want to discourage you from saying that you can't buy a home. You just need to understand that the prices have gone up drastically over the past couple of years. So if you're moving to Los Angeles and you're planning on becoming a homeowner, you definitely want to look at what it's going to take from a budget standpoint and what you have in your bank account so that you can kind of plan all of this out, right? So there's a lot of people who get here and they see the prices of houses, and for what we pay, if you put that same house in middle America, it'd be far less expensive.
Number 3.
Another thing to consider is air quality. Now, you've probably heard on the news, whatever it was, that the air quality in Los Angeles is pretty bad. And I'm going to tell you from firsthand experience, as somebody who has respiratory issues and has a son who has respiratory issues, that is a dead spot on piece of information that you need to know. If you're somebody who is dealing with respiratory problems, you want to take this into consideration, because at some days the smog level can be bad. Some days we get winds that are called the Santa Anas that can affect your allergies. All types of things are going on with the air quality in Los Angeles. That doesn't mean that this is the worst place by far. But again, if you're coming from like down south or middle America, the Midwest, someplace like that, where the air quality is much better, this may pose a threat to your way of life. So something to strongly consider again before you decide to make that move to sunny Los Angeles.
Number 2.
This one should come as no real shock. The traffic just, it's bad. It's really bad. So if you're somebody who doesn't like to spend a lot of time in your car, if you're somebody who gets road rage pretty easily, definitely consider this one before you decide to come to Los Angeles. When you live 8 miles away from your house and it takes you 40 minutes to get to work, that's a telltale sign about how bad the traffic really is. And if you've heard any nightmares about the 405 freeway being a parking lot, I'm here to tell you, those aren't rumors, those are true. So again, if you're somebody who doesn't like to drive or spend a lot of time in their car, consider getting a Metro Pass or something along those lines, because our traffic system definitely sucks.
Number 1.
Last but not least, earthquakes. So I know there's natural disasters in every part of the country. So I know down south you've got hurricanes, on the East Coast you've got hurricanes and floods and all these kind of crazy things like that. In the middle you've got snowstorms and blizzards and tornadoes. I've sat through all of that. I've never sat through something quite like an earthquake before until I got to Cali. And so if you're not used to the ground swaying and building swaying back and forth and then jolting really hard, it might shock you the first time you go through it. Now, we haven't had a big one, and they don't happen all that often where you can really feel them, but it's something to consider that, yes, if you live in Los Angeles, there are going to be earthquakes. It's just part of living in Los Angeles, part of living in California for that matter. But if it's something that you can deal with, that you're not going to really freak out when it happens, again, we haven't really had a bad one, but it could come. Nobody knows. So you want to keep that in consideration, again, when you're thinking about whether this is a good move for you to move to Los Angeles. So there we go, folks. Those are my top 10 things to consider before moving to Los Angeles. Now, this is a great city. There's a lot of great things to do. There's a lot of great people, tons of diversity. Where else can you go that you can go to the beach and then you can go snowboarding on the same day, literally hours apart? Where can you do that at? LA is a great place to be, but there are some costs associated with it, and you need to budget those things out and really take those into consideration before you decide to make that move. Now, I hope you found this information useful. Please subscribe to the channel, ring that bell so you're notified when I drop future editions of Info on the Go to YouTube. I want to thank you again for watching. As always, I will see you next time.